I'm especially interested in the children who have planning and organizational issues, how it impacts them pervasively throughout their life. I'm interested in how it impacts their daily living skills, how it impacts their ability to keep their room clean, ability to get out of the door in the morning, perform their daily routines, pack their backpack, things like that. So I want to talk about what occupational therapists call human occupation. But you can think of it as human doing. What motivates us? How do we perform well? How do we create habits and routines? So this perspective is based on the idea that as humans we are an open system, right? You take in information and energy from your environment, you process it in some way, you assimilate it, you decide what to do about it, you learn from it, and that creates an action. You do something based on what happened to that information when it was inside you. You get feedback from your environment, from other people, from the consequences of what you do, and the whole cycle starts all over again. So I want you to think of this as a pyramid. So here's the base of the pyramid, and that would be your skills. Your skills can kind of be categorized into three categories: communication skills and interaction skills. And children with ADHD do typically have problems in this area because they're impulsive, they have a hard time listening, sometimes they have a hard time taking turns. By all means, not all of them have problems in this area, but that might be something that's familiar to some of you. There are perceptual motor skills, which might be considered what you do with you take in sensory information and it causes your body to do an action. So it's your ability to move your body based on the sensory information you're taking in from around you. And then the third area would be processing skills, which is an area that we also see pretty significantly impacted with our kids with ADHD, especially in the area of executive function. Those are the skills you need to plan and organize and use your working memory and manipulate the information and do something with the information that you've gotten. The next level above that are your habits and your routines. And I'm talking more about habits that you develop, rituals and routines, and how you make things to be really intuitive. And we want all of our skills to develop habits and routines so that we can handle the things that are going on around us. If we don't have something that's made into a habit or routine, as soon as the situation changes, we're going to fall apart. You may have seen this with your children. You may have thought that they had that habit or routine down, but suddenly you changed your schedule or there are new demands put on your family. Maybe it's financial demands, maybe you had to move, maybe you had to switch schools, maybe they had an argument with their best friend, who knows, and all of a sudden you start to see things fall apart. That might be a hint that whatever it was that they were doing may not have been as ingrained as you thought. The next layer of the pyramid is your motivation and your values. And we can see how these all kind of work together in a way. What gives us motivation is partially our sense of effectiveness on the world, right? Do we think that we can impact the world? Can we make change in the world? Do we even have the skills, or do we perceive that we have the skills available to make change in the world? Do you think that you can control your environment, or do you tend to think that things happen to you? Another thing that can affect your motivation is your interests, right? Whether you find something pleasurable or not. And all these things can be, changed by what's happening to you when you're trying to perform these skills. These are kind of in a state of flux in a way. You're trying to instill values on your kid, but sometimes your kid just doesn't have that value because they've been taught not to have that value, because each time they try to be successful, they fail. So you can see how the values and the skills and the motivation and everything kind of interacts with each other. So if your skill is impacted, it's harder to create habits. If you can't create habits and routines, then you can't be successful in what you're doing consistently. If you can't be successful in what you're doing, then you're going to feel badly about it and you're not going to want to do it. So you can see what can happen if you have a child who has difficulty with some of these skills like planning and organization, and they have difficulty establishing habits and routines, And they're not very motivated to do the activity that you want them to do because they've been so unsuccessful at it in the past, or maybe it's just not something that's motivating to them, like cleaning a bedroom. How many of you have kids who are like, I can live with the mess. This doesn't really bother me, right? So sometimes you just have kind of internal values that just aren't the same as adults, as a kid. And you can really affect these different areas. You can create a sense of poor self-esteem because of your lack of success. You can also create a total shutdown of the whole system because you're going to stop wanting to interact with the environment if you're getting enough negative feedback.